Welcome again to Cottage Talk. I am Russ Goldman. Joining me right now is Matt, Kamal, and Alex. This is another episode of View from the Hammy end. This episode, we're going to talk about the victory against Tottenham Hotspur at Craven Cottage. Now, let's be honest here. We're going to talk about this match in detail. This should be fun. Alex and Kamal watched it together. Me and Matt, we watched it on television. So Matt could not make it to Craven Cottage, but that does not mean he doesn't have a strong opinion, because I know he does. So he's still, I'm sure you do. So this should be a lot of fun. But before we do anything else, I want to also mention, as I've been doing, I'm really trying to build up Fulham's, there's a Goldman for you, Cottage Talks YouTube channel. So please do subscribe on YouTube. I would highly appreciate that. All right, guys, let's get to talking about this match. First of all, I want to welcome everyone to the show. Alex, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having us on again, Russ. Pleasure to be here.
It should be a lot of fun. Kamal, how you doing?
As good as ever, man. You know, me and my family, we're always listening to you. My kid's up next. He's only 5, but he'll subscribe.
That's great. Matt, thank you so much for joining us tonight. You were in Barcelona for a little bit, so it's good to have you back on.
Thanks, mate. Good to be back, and especially after a win.
Scouting mission, was it, Matt?
It was a little bit, yeah. There's a guy called Lamine Yamal, but I don't think we need him.
Okay, maybe he can start in the under-18s or something.
Yeah, get him behind Josh King.
Sounds good. All right, guys, let's just start here. Let's just give our opening thoughts on the victory, and then we can break down what we all watched here. So, Alex, I'm going to start with you. Just give me your thoughts on just the victory in general, what it meant. Certainly, we're going to talk about the magic moments, because there were some really magic moments, of course, with Ryan Sessegnon, but it's more than that. Just give me your overall thoughts on the victory itself.
Yeah, I mean, usually I'm, the super upbeat, optimistic, positive one, and this was a brilliant result. So, but I've got to admit, it was a bit underwhelming in terms of performance. I didn't find it entirely convincing. I'm sure we'll get into some of the nuances of the game. But I do think it was a massively important 3 points. I'm now doing loads of maths before a game. I'm just going, if we get, you're kind of looking at, and with Brentford beating Bournemouth and Newcastle, Palace, Villa.
I'm doing the same thing.
So I'm there doing all the maths, juggling things. And, it was always going to be massive if we won this. It puts us right back in the mix. So a huge 3 points. It wasn't a Premier League quality football game, if we're honest. But great win.
Here's a question I want to ask you, Alex. Do you think Fulham played down to the competition? This is actually something that Tony Gold mentioned to me on the post-match show. It's almost like Fulham played down to them. What do you think about that?
I would love to make that claim, but I think, when you look at the Palace game before this, we were even worse in that game, and Palace were great. So it's not like we were playing. If a team plays brilliant, we step up. We didn't against Palace. I think Spurs were just really sloppy. I don't think we were as sloppy as them. I just thought we lacked a bit of dynamism, a bit of imagination. We were a bit staid, a bit stolid. So I don't think that's quite it. If anything, some of the Spurs players looked sharper, more powerful at times. It's just that they got really sloppy with the ball, especially in the second half. Their goals they scored from their perspective are farcical, let's be honest. So I don't know. I would love to think that's true, but I don't think it is. I just think we're still not quite at our best at the moment, and we need to go up a gear if we're going to have the end of the season that we all really want.
Okay, excellent stuff. Matt, over to you. From what you watched, what are your opening thoughts?
So, apart from this felt karmic, because the away fixture, which Alex and I were in the away end for, we got a draw, which at the time felt great, but that was because at the time Spurs were still riding quite high on, Ange is the future. They got some exciting signings. And a point felt pretty good at the time, and I think everyone since then has beaten them basically at White Hart Lane. We deserved to win that day. We had the bigger chances, and we ended up with a draw. And I thought this result, everything Alex says, this was about as logical a draw for an outcome as there was. The XG for this game was 0.98 versus 0.99. Leno didn't really have to do too much, and Vicario didn't really have to do too much, but we just had, those two crunch moments go our way. I think that, the big moment in the game was probably the Solanke miss from the Madison chest down. That, it felt like a game where if we'd gone behind, we'd have struggled to get back into it, just as they went behind and they struggled to get back into it. But it's an amazing win. And to Alex's point, we now end up sort of not knowing which way to look. Do we look at Europe? Do we look at the Cup? I think the final reflection, just quickly, is the timing of when you play teams is always really interesting. You can get teams when they're in the middle of a run. Like if we got to play Ipswich now, guarantee we get 3 points. We ended up playing Ipswich at quite bad moments, as for instances.
Right.
Playing Tottenham, as I will continue to call them, even though I'm not allowed to, playing Tottenham the Sunday after they just had a quite draining European Cup, European competition knockout round, when they've got some players coming back and they rotated their squad as a result to not get any more injuries, for instance, to Mickey van der Ven, and taking Romero off, I thought was catastrophic for them. It was a good time to play them, and we made them pay.
Totally agree. I just want to go back to a point you just made, because I think what Spurs is doing, you could argue if this is the right thing, Matt, they're prioritizing the Europa League.
Yeah, they should. They should.
Okay, they should, right? But should Fulham be able to prioritize and manage both? We're talking about, this is a huge moment. The next 3 matches are massive, and they're all coming all together, which is crazy. But is it possible for them to manage that?
If they win that tournament, if they win that tournament, which they have to win it to make it worthwhile.
Sure.
I think they have to win 9 matches from here. If we win the FA Cup, we have to win 3 from here. We basically have one hard game in the FA Cup, which was against Man United, who we've been better than the last 5 times we've played them. We've just managed to lose pretty much all of those games. Before that, Watford and Wigan, that isn't a cup run. It's now a cup run. We've beaten Man United. To prioritize 3 games, Crystal Palace at home, semi-final against coming up against Preston, and then I'd love to have Brighton in the final.
Wow.
I think that would be the dream, not because I think that we've got a particular hoodoo over them, but there are 3 teams left in the tournament who've never won anything.
Yeah,
so it's us, Crystal Palace, and Brighton, and I'd love for there to be a final where a bit nice. Like everyone was looking forward to the Spurs versus Newcastle League Cup final, where it was 2 teams desperate for silverware. I love the idea of a Fulham Brighton FA Cup final.
That sounds actually like it would be fun.
3 games, and we're in Europa League next year, and we've got Marco Silva on a 5-year contract.
Okay,
so we can prioritize that.
Matt, please don't have me go there right now. Okay, I understand, but now you got my head spinning. I'm not going to disagree with any of that. All right, over to you, Kamal. Opening thoughts on the victory.
Well, so I listened to the Gold on the earlier show, the Gold, the Gold Bully in Port Knox, and he was saying that we raise our game when we play top 6.
That's true.
But Spurs is not top 6 anymore, unfortunately. So, and they really are playing appallingly. And I mean, did anybody watch Match of the Day? Did any of you guys watch Match of the Day? So it was very funny with Troy Deeney saying, "Look, they've got 18 days left before their next match, and they field their weakened side. What is going on with this team?" So we had it pretty lucky. We had a Spurs that's on the downslide. And did anybody see there's in the last part of the match when Son came on, he crossed to the box and he spun around and he put his hands on his head like that. Did you see that? And he's just in such despair and lack of self-belief. And it felt to me that we're the opposite. We've got Calvin Bassey, who's on testosterone at the moment, who's fighting with everybody on the pitch. It was wonderful to see.
I love that, by the way.
We were all fighting. We were so fighting throughout the match for what we could get, and we were determined to see it through. And who is it? I think I heard somebody talking about Silva. Who's it? Troy Deeney was talking about Silva. My old mate. My favourite Troy Deeney was about Silva, and about how he actually really demands and sets targets for players. And you could see that the focus was there. I do notice, going to hand it to you though. You gave a 2-0 prediction.
I did.
Yeah. My brother, the judge, said 3. Alex was too scared to make a prediction.
I wasn't. You weren't there on time to hear my prediction, but there you go.
Was it 2-0
or 1-1?
I thought we'd win by a goal.
I couldn't. Matt was playing with Lego, man. Couldn't get a hold of him. So
I was at Legoland. I didn't think we'd win by 2 clear goals because is this the first time we've done that this season in the league? No, Newcastle, but we got a 93rd minute 3rd goal, and every other win we've had, I think I'm right in saying, it's been by 1 goal.
Didn't we beat Brighton by 2?
Oh yes, you're right. The 3-1 against Brighton. There we go.
So so it was quite an exciting match, and I didn't. I've got to be honest that I've been like so psyched up and hyped up, just like all the fans were.
Yep.
But when I got to the ground, I saw all those like. The funny thing with Spurs fans, you have 2 sets of fans. You have all the fans that come to Putney Bridge, singing really psychotic songs. God, I hope they don't listen to this. And then you have all the fans who are parking up in their Mercedes SLs and blocking all the parking spaces on the Fulham Palace Road.
Which is annoying to you because you're one of them.
I'm a Fulham fan, dude. I'm a Fulham fan. So it took ages for me to park yesterday.
Yeah, Teslas don't fit in everywhere, do they?
No, not a Tesla. No. But by the time we got to the ground, it's like you almost, as a Fulham fan, start suffering from the deflation syndrome. And I look over, whenever these two are over here, it's always like crossed arms and this while the game's going on. And you can see it's like we know we have it all and we have it all to lose. That's the kind of feeling that we have.
Okay, so that's what you were thinking before the match. Alex, what were you thinking before the match? What was your mindset?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I was obsessed with maths all of a sudden. I'm just, doing the maths, got my abacus out, looking where we're going to end up in the league. That was my attitude before the game. I did think we'd sneak a win. I thought it'd be close. As Matt says, massive bonus was I was watching them on Thursday night, just praying it would go to injury time.
So was I.
Yeah, so I was a bit glad it didn't. But you could see, that was an emotionally draining game. It was a close run game. Even though it didn't go to injury time, I thought it would take something out of them. To be honest, I know a lot of people are saying, oh, why didn't they play their first 11? But obviously, Van der Ven is a brilliant player. Him and Romero, one hell of a centre-back pairing. They complement each other really well. One's an absolute nut job animal, violent, aggressive psychopath who just is determined to win. And the other's like the quickest player in the Premier League, So they're a great combo. And the reason they dropped Van der Ven is that he's just back from his hammy injury. He can't play 2 games in that space of time. So that was, they didn't have a choice really with that one. I think I personally would have quite liked them to play Son. I was like, oh no, I was hoping they were going to give those guys another game because I thought they're not going to have the freshness. We're going to boss them if they play that same team. We're going to do them. So when I saw, and their backups are good. Johnson, he scores loads of goals. Yep. So I was actually, Tell is a good young player. He looked powerful and strong for the first half in particular. So I honestly don't think that was their problem, that they played a reserve side, nor did I think, yes, we're going to win because of it. I was actually a bit like, I was hoping they were going to play all the knackered players. I thought we'd nick a win, but I thought it was going to be really close. And I wasn't as upbeat about their starting lineup as maybe other people were, because I thought they'd be up for it with those players who don't get to play quite as much.
Okay, so I'm going to share my thoughts, and then Matt, I'll go to you, because I want to go off on what you just said. So when I saw the starting 11, that's what I'm going to take it from. I'm thinking that with the lineup that they put out, Fulham need to get up on this team, because I knew that Ange Postecoglou could change the match with his substitutes. So I'm thinking we need to score, and we probably need to score in the first half. We need to get that first goal. The longer it went on, I was concerned that they would be able to change the game maybe more than we could. That was my fear going into the match. I still felt confident, but I thought that Fulham had to get up on this team. And that's not how it all played out. Matt, what were you thinking before the match?
I was pleased to see that Silva's got to the stage where, Willian was fit enough to start. We've had this now twice with Willian. When he signs for the club, there's a little bit of time before we actually throw him into the starting lineup. This is his third time signing with us. If the rumors are to be believed, then he was training with us in December and then signed for us weirdly after the January transfer window had closed. There's still a great talent in there. He's not quite as electric as he has been, of course. That's why he's with us rather than with Barcelona or Real Madrid or whoever he would want to go to. But the connection that he's got with some of our players, I think, was very clear. Yep. And he solved a problem that had become a problem. Traore had that knock from the previous game, the ankle knock. The previous home game, and it was a question really of whether it was going to be Smith Rowe shunted out wide, Harrison Reed in the middle, and Pereira forward, or whether it was going to be a start for Ryan Sessegnon. But we haven't seen him yet in that winger capacity from the start. We saw him in the wing back role against Wolves. So Willian coming in was perfectly timed, and I thought it would give us some control. The thing I was nervous about was the combination of Pereira and Smith Rowe in midfield. It just makes me nervous. I thought Pereira was excellent. It was one of his best performances.
Totally agree, Matt. Totally agree.
And I think, to his great credit, one of the things that, Silva deserves so much credit as well here for the job that he's done with some of these players that we've brought in. Iwobi is someone who can play across the line. Pereira is someone who can now credibly play in two positions. We've got some flexibility to us now, but I thought Pereira was excellent alongside Berger. And I thought he was absolutely fantastic when he went up front in a sort of new combo. I talked about the bomb squad before. Our substitute strike force of effectively take off Smith Rowe and Jimenez and push forward Pereira and put on Muniz worked really well. And I thought it combined with Ange shooting himself in the foot by sticking out Romero.
Taking Romero off.
Because Muniz suddenly, I don't know when this happened, but Muniz is now a physical striker. So he is more and more the player who will do the things that Mitro used to do. He's not there yet, but the big 50-50 headers and the holding the ball up, it's a hell of a lot easier for doing that against Archie Gray, who is a relatively slight 18-year-old central midfielder, than Romero, who is a thuggish 29-year-old Argentine. So I was delighted with that change, but I thought the changes worked really well. But Pereira, I think he has actually now been given man of the match.
Yep.
I thought he was sensational in both positions that he was asked to play.
I turned to Kamal as soon as Romero got sent off and went, there's now goals in this game. This isn't going to end 0-0.
Right, yeah.
As soon as he made that decision, it was like,
Alex, you were right, because it's funny. Like I said, I just did a post-match show, and the way that we discussed it, the substitutes changed the game. That's what we talked about on the post-match show. But it was the substitutes by both sides. It was the decisions that Ange made at the beginning of the second half, but it was also taking Romero off and what Marco did. The combination of everything is probably what you guys saw, Alex, in the second half, because it wasn't just one side making the change that affected the game. It was also Tottenham with the changes they made.
Totally, yeah. I mean, yeah, the Romero thing. I mean, I can only think, again, he's just coming back from injury, and they've got a lot of data and stats, and maybe they know he's got this amount of minutes in him. So I can only think it was pre-designed, because it made no sense. He was really good, incredibly solid, just like a beast. He really was back there, and it makes such a difference when Ben Davies, I think, is a good, reliable defender, but he's a second defender. He needs that really solid, leader beside him for me. And as soon as he went off, I thought Archie Gray coming back, there's definitely there's
an opportunity. There's an opportunity.
And, to be fair, his subs at halftime worked for them. They came out much stronger second half. I was, again, up until that slang, I wrote in, I was thinking of that before the kind of chat here today, the two moments I was going to bring out, the two moments that Matt has already mentioned, the Solanke miss, because it just looked like Spurs were going to score. And I was thinking, come on, Marco, do something, because they're going to score. And then he missed it. And you're thinking, okay, maybe it's not their day. And then when Romero came off, those were the two moments I just thought, okay, this changes things right here. And and obviously we'll get into the goals, but the Maddison who came on, he was instrumental in the breakdown of the first move that led to the kind of waves of play that eventually gave us our first goal. So those two moments I think are absolutely the pivotal moments of the game.
Alex, I got to call you out, mate.
Oh God!
You did say there were goals, and I said, "Who's going to say?" He goes, "I don't know. It's going to be both ways." Yeah, he said it's going to be.
I said it could go either way because they'd gone more attacking as well. But I just knew this wasn't going to end 0-0 when Romero went off. I was thinking
it's never as perfect as it sounds.
I'm never going to say, "Oh, we're going to score." I'm not like that because I feel like I'm going to curse if I do that.
That's true. He's never been like that.
Yeah, I can't.
Okay.
But me saying there's going to be goals is as close to me saying we're going to score.
I enjoyed it. I like Matt. I like Alex's nervousness because it kind of gets me. It gets my blood going as well. Gets me charged.
Good stuff from you guys. All right, so we're still before the game. All right, so we've already basically talked about Spurs in general, but I want to get your thoughts on what was your prediction before the match began. I think you guys might have mentioned some. I mentioned mine was 2-0. Yes, I got it right. I rarely get it right. Matt, what was your prediction maybe to yourself before the match? What were you thinking?
I thought it would be either 1-0 to us or 1-1. I didn't think we'd lose. I thought Spurs would either rotate or be too tired. But I didn't think we'd win 2-0. I was delighted to get a very rare clean sheet.
Okay, excellent. Over to you, Kamal. What were you thinking? What was your prediction?
Well, I mean, I was, as usual, as everybody knows, that's what Alex is probably smiling. And Matt probably looks at me dumbfounded. My prediction changes every 10 minutes.
Depends. Whenever a goal goes in, he changes his prediction.
Yeah.
Okay, that's unfair. That's unfair.
And still gets it wrong at the end.
As you know, there's a lovely couple who sit next to us, Ben and Holly, who we hope to get on the show at some point. And Holly always comes out with these crazy predictions that I think she picks out of a magic hat, and 9 times out of 10 they just end up being right. And I don't know what bunnies she's pulling out of the hat, but I wish I could pull those bunnies out of the hat. But on the way down to the ground, I was listening and I heard that they had 5 changes from the match on Thursday, and I thought, and because that they have been so drained and they've been so weakened, and I thought, I felt a bit more confident. But when that first half happened, I was like, this is a very flat match. And it's one of those days where, because our lineup was pretty strong, but it was one of those days where, we need Tony Gold at the edge of the pitch screaming at them, to wake up, because they were like sleeping. I mean, there was no, and my favorite comment, I'm going to recycle it because it's easier than coming out with fresh analysis like Matt and Alex, is tick-a-tack-a, 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 tick-a-tack-a.
I can always count on him saying ticky-tack. I can always count on that. Okay, good stuff there, Kamal. Alex, what was your prediction?
Yeah, I thought Fulham would win by a goal. I thought it'd be. I did think it'd be a close game, but I thought off the back of the European draining stuff for Spurs, I thought we'd nick it by a goal. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, guys, let's now focus on. You get to halftime, and what were your thoughts at halftime? So we'll go through your thoughts on the first half. So I want to ask all 3 of you this question because I asked Tony this, and I have the ability to watch this over and over, so I get a good view. Matt, you and I could watch this and get a good view of this. I want to first focus on Raul's potential penalty, because for me, that was a first-class Mexican dive, okay? That was not a penalty, okay? As I said to Tony Gold, I want to get your thoughts on this. It's basically like me putting my hand on your back and you do a Superman dive. I love our players, but I'm going to call them out when I feel it's a dive. So I'm going to ask you the question. Was that a penalty, Matt?
No, I agree.
Thank you. I don't think that was a penalty at all. Alex, penalty or not a penalty?
I don't know. In the ground, I've got to admit, I thought definite pen. I mean, we're the other end of the ground from that, so it's the far side. But the way it was like two hands, shove on the back, and he goes flying forward. I've since seen it obviously on the telly on Match of the Day, and yeah, he does massively exaggerate the dive. It would be interesting to know because you don't really know. You see the guy put two hands on his back. If he hadn't done that ridiculous exaggerated dive, would it have looked as convincing? I don't know, because it did look to me like he was genuinely shoved. He was about to head the ball. There was no reason to do it. So I feel like, it probably was a penalty, but he shot himself in the foot by doing the ridiculous exaggerated thing. So I'm going to say yes, but he still dived. Yeah.
Okay. How about you, Kamal? When you were at the ground, what did you think?
Well, as Alex knows, I need to get my bifocals like me so I can see what's going on at the other end. But he reminded me, Raul reminded me of another one of my Mexican heroes, Rey Mysterio. Does anybody know Rey Mysterio?
I know Rey Mysterio. Yep.
And it looked like it looked like a proper somersault from like the Royal Rumble in 1999. And but an interesting thing is that Dermot Gallagher, I mean, Matt knows everything. He reads everything. He does this thing called Ref Watch.
Yes, I know that.
And he said that had he not, like gone for gold, it's like in the Eurovision Dance Contest, he would have given that as a penalty. But the ref who, let's be, I mean, a lot of people think he had a pretty poor day, to be honest. I thought
absolutely, I thought so.
He was just, as soon as he saw, the operatics, he saw, the ballet dancing, he just thought this.
I think the two things in defense of the ref, I thought the two possible penalties were probably about the Bassi on Bergvall.
Yep, we're going to talk about that too.
I thought they were about the same level of penalty. Like they're both, if they'd been given, they wouldn't be overturned.
Good point. Yeah.
But, so I think he was consistent there, and I also, as long as there's nothing absolutely reckless, any game that manages to go by in the Premier League where there is no yellow card in the game, I think the referee has probably had a fairly good day. I agree. He felt like he was either completely just not watching the game or he'd lost his whistle, and then at other times he'd be like a whistle every 5 seconds. But I thought on those two metrics, which you want even distribution on the big decisions, and then you ideally want someone to be non-interventionist to let the game flow, and I think he was okay on those.
Yeah, good point. Very good point.
Okay, good points, but I will go back to one situation where I think he got really wrong, Matt, and we got a good view watching this. The Williams situation at right at the top of the box, right before the box. Mm-hmm. That was a free kick. I don't know what he was saying there. Would you agree with me on that?
Yeah, I would. I agree.
Yeah.
That looked like a blatant free kick from where we were as well. And also from where we were, I couldn't tell if that wasn't in the box. So I was really hoping for a VAR. Obviously, I haven't seen it back, so I don't know how close it was to the box. But was it close?
Really? It was. Well, no, it wasn't.
It was definitely not in. So
right. It was a long way away for us. So,
yeah.
Fair enough.
All right, guys. Let's move on.
Just a quick one on the sort of halftime things. When I watched it, I thought positives were we looked really solid at the back. So the first half they were completely, really without threat whatsoever to Leno. In the Hammersmith end, we were hardly having to face anything of any significance or danger. I thought Anderson's distribution was much improved relative to previous weeks, and that's such an important part of both his and our game. His passes were, for the first time in a couple of months, really, since he's been back, finding the hold-up striker in Jimenez. So I thought that was very good. And then, on to balance up the ledger, I thought Smith Rowe was absolutely appalling again.
Okay.
I thought this was a step backwards, and I think now he for what is a crunch game now. I think he's played himself out of the team. I can't see how he can come back. I know we're not going to talk about Palace today unless you want to, Russ, but I think we improved as soon as he went off the pitch.
Well, I will tell you that I would agree with that, but even Tony thought he played pretty good. I thought he was okay. I thought it was okay.
Well, that's his game. He's a 6 out of 10 player where, it's not like he is bungling everything. He just doesn't do anything. So there's a lot of safety first, which is the opposite of what you want from the player playing in the hole behind your target man. You want someone. I still want Morgan Gibbs-White. I mean,
Well, I want Morgan Gibbs-White too.
I'd like to win the lottery as well, but I want a player who takes risks, who is dynamic, and who excites. And at the moment, he is the opposite to all of those. We have several players in our squad now who are more dynamic, more exciting, and pose more of a threat than him, which for your record signing is bleak. But I will trust in Marco to get his claws into this guy over the summer, but he's done for the season as far as I'm concerned. He can be the rotation player while we march on to Wembley.
Okay. Wow. All right.
Matt,
guys,
don't sit on the fence, mate. Don't sit on the fence.
That's okay. Listen, he's entitled to his opinion. Come on.
Well,
what do you make of that?
Look at him in another way. I am always disappointed with him. I like his direct cuts, but in this game, Matt was right. I saw him pass back. I saw him go in, get nervous, and pass sideways and pass back. And I thought, what's with him? Where the balls are coming into the box? Where's his guts? So
yep.
I'm kind of like, I am sitting on the fence, but I'm kind of being pulled over towards Matt's side.
Okay, Alex, where do you fall on this?
On the ESR thing, I mean, so I thought he was okay on the day. I don't think he was quite as bad as Matt's making out. I think he was neat and tidy in the first half. Where I think his lack of both dynamism and invention was more striking in this game was because we didn't, Willian was the second winger. That meant we didn't have the kind of dynamic wingers bombing on, and so suddenly him not doing much was more evident, I thought. So for me, it was more around the stuff around him. In and of itself, it was another 6 out of 10 display, neat and tidy, not enough, you'd say. But I didn't think he was drastically worse than he's been for the most part. But I think it just drew attention to it because we weren't creating things from elsewhere, So that's. But I think Matt's point is right insofar as I would say Pereira in the whole in the next game and Lukic back in inside Berger. So
no, there's a good argument for that.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Pereira was much better on the day and deserves to go next game.
He does, and I will go with Matt on that. I disagree on overall on ESR, but I think, but to your point, he needs to be more dynamic. He's not dynamic enough, Matt. So I definitely understand where you're going on that. I do want to share this because it does involve someone's brother. So let me share this comment from Sahel. He says Smith Rowe and Iwobi were woeful. So I just want to mention that. And I do have a comment from Tony Gold, which I'm going to share in a little bit when we talk about the second half. But so no, good stuff talking about that. But I'm curious what you guys were thinking at halftime. Alex, were you thinking at halftime that Fulham needed to make any changes?
Yeah, good question. No, not immediately. I thought we grew into the first half. I thought they started a bit better than us, and we grew into it. We hadn't created much. You had that one penalty shout maybe, and obviously Castagna missed a good opportunity. I didn't realize quite how good an opportunity that was until I saw it later on the telly. It was a really, really good opportunity.
It was really, really bad miss.
Yeah, terrible effort. But no, I thought, I thought, okay, this game's going to be much tighter than I thought. When you play in Spurs, you kind of expect goals. At halftime, I was thinking, I don't know where the hell are goals coming from. And my mate, who's a Spurs fan, he texted me going, we haven't had a 0-0 draw since 2022. So
that's crazy.
Well, here we go. This is going to be it. But no, I wasn't thinking immediate changes, to be honest. And I was actually surprised, when we'll get into this, I'm sure, but how early he did make the sub, which was positive, I thought. And obviously we've already said that that made all the difference. Actually, that was the turning point. I was at halftime I was like comfortable. I thought we'd grown into the game. I thought, okay, another 10 minutes. Let's see how we go. Obviously, when the second half started, Spurs came out much stronger, and so I was less confident 10 or 15 minutes into the second half. Right up until that Solanke miss, I was thinking this isn't going for us. So so at halftime I was kind of okay, underwhelmed, thinking, oh God, we could be heading for a 0-0 here. But I was glad when the subs did come. Let's say that.
Okay, over to you, Kamal. What were you thinking about the second half? Do you expect changes? Were you expecting them to happen when they came?
I think I had a little chat with Alex over there. Alex was like, because Matt wasn't there. Alex was all by his lonesome, and I see that he was feeling a little bit lost. Needed to kind of express himself, but he was also. I'm talking about him, not about me. But I like the way that he was very indecisive about what was happening for the match. Was going to happen in the match because it was so boring. It was a bit bland. It was like it was a bit what was that? Ovaltine. Does anybody remember Ovaltine? It was.
I remember Ovaltine.
Yeah. And it's like
such a strange reference.
Bland. And you could see, that like people were talking more to each other in the Hammy end rather than watching the game. Like, that people were just, what were you up to? What were you doing? And it's because there was no real goal mouth action. It was all being played, pitter passer. I was going to try and think of a famous. I was going to talk about a famous Fulham manager, but I know that it'll make everybody angry. But it was getting a bit, Parker ball. It's just like moving.
Oh, okay.
But what you said, I listened to your show analysis.
Yep.
On the way back when I was driving back from the airport, and you said that Marco, the changes that were done by Ange were matched by the changes. It was almost like a chess match.
Yes, that's what I felt.
Marco.
Yes.
And if you look at the stats, the funny thing is, I looked at the stats; they are so even.
Right.
And it looks like they were playing as much as the teams were playing each other. That Marco was playing Ang.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
9 attempts on off target for Fulham, 8 for Spurs, 4 on target for Fulham, 4 for Spurs. Corners 6 for Fulham, 5 for Spurs. I'll stop there. But I thought it was like a proper chess match.
I've got to say one of the things just on Spurs briefly.
Go ahead, Matt.
So the two things very quickly on them. After watching the first half, I watched it afterwards, so I knew that he'd been subbed off. But someone, presumably starting with Yves Bissouma himself, needs to hang their head in shame as to what they've done to a player who at one point was sort of heralded as the defensive midfielder in the Premier League. And he's still a relatively young guy, but he is going backwards fast. I thought he was absolutely
totally agree. He was terrible.
And to me, he feels like a doer-upper that we'll go and get for 22 million or 15 million and turn into the next
reclamation project.
Yeah, sort of take him into rehab. The flip side, the energy I thought that Bergvall brought was so good. I thought he was super impressive, and it took us until the Kearney substitution coming on, who was quietly. Kearney didn't do anything spectacular at all, but our control in midfield, with Pereira going further forward and pressing a bit more aggressively and retaining the ball, was matched as well, I think, by Kearney doing a very quietly efficient job of calming Bergvall down. If Bergvall's key moments were from halftime when he came on, I thought he was excellent immediately until 70 odd minutes. I forget when Kearney came on, but when Kearney came on, Bergvall started to quieten down again, and we regained control.
Yep. Listen, I think that is where the match was taking place. The turning points for me are all the substitutions. First, starting with Anges to begin the second half, then Marco playing the chess match and making his substitutions. But the one, like I said, the one that we have to mention is Romero going off. because it all led to what I think we all watched was it was a combination of everything. Because Romero coming off, all of a sudden we came alive with Rodrigo Muniz. That is not an accident, okay? Because they were comfortable up until Romero came off. But I think if Muniz isn't in there, maybe it doesn't come off as well with Raul. So I think it's a combination. And then, as you said, Matt, bringing on Kearney, that changes everything. And of course, Traore offering what he offered. And I can even go to the very end and mention Ryan Sessegnon. We'll talk about the goals. I want to get your thoughts on the goals. But I think the changes is really where the match was won by Fulham, ultimately, Matt.
Yep, I completely agree. It was a very even contest that, as a certain manager of ours once used to say, after every game that we lose 1-0, it's about fine margins.
Oh, yes. Yes, Mr. Parker, it is fine margins. Yeah. Anyways, so guys, let's move on. I do want to share one comment, and Tony is watching, so I want to share this because to me, this is one of my finest moments of the match, but he also wants to mention it's a great show, gents. Brilliant to meet you yesterday, Kamal. I'm pleased to let you know Romero is recovering while Bassi sends his love. I got to tell you, Alex, I laughed my ass off when that happened. I've watched it about 100 times. I love it. What were your thoughts when you saw that?
So
you get a good view of it?
No. Is this the where Bassi wipes him out after the ball's been played? And then so who did he wipe out? It wasn't Romero, was it?
It was
Romero was trying to get the ball off Bassi, and Bassi just sort of pushed him like that. Romero went flying. The player was very reminiscent of, I thought, was Mitrovic on Van Dijk when we first came up.
Yeah.
And there was or maybe it was Henderson who went bouncing off him, and then he did a Cruyff turn on Van Dijk on the halfway line.
Right.
But it was Mitro-esque. It was, you're going to try and get into a body matchup with me. I will put you on the floor, my friend. And Romero went tumbling.
Oh, that was great.
This was right after he did so I can't remember who it was, but one of the Spurs players, maybe it was Odegaard or somebody, was running away after the whistle, and he just jumped. And I was a bit worried it could be VAR'd because it looked like he got him on the ankle well after the game had stopped. And then that led to the ruckus. No, this isn't the same thing. Okay, in that case, I must have missed it. I need to watch it back. It wasn't. They didn't show this in match today, so
you were talking about it. You said, "Oh my god, I think we're gonna." So you were like, it went on for ages, and Calvin didn't stop arguing, talking to the ref.
Oh,
and it was very heated. But we thought that.
But maybe it was after that he saw Romero getting thrown to the floor that Ange thought, I better get him off before he breaks something.
Maybe that's what caused it. I don't know, but I got to tell you that to me was a key moment.
I wish I'd seen it more. I mean, I saw the set too, but from where we were, we didn't get the level of detail you guys could see. I didn't notice Romero getting.
Alex, just so you know, Fulham put it on their X account, so you can watch it.
I'll check it out.
Okay, but I just wanted to mention that because to me that was one of my favorite moments of the match. But I now want to go to both. Actually, all three of you. I want to talk about the goals because to me we're talking about the turning points of the match, but we have to talk about the goals. So let's now talk about the goal from Rodrigo Muniz and. Alex, I'll go to you. Do you get a good view of this goal?
Yeah, absolutely. Got a great view of this goal. It was an incredibly euphoric moment because, like I said, there was a chance that this game was drifting out into a 0-0, even though once Romero went off, I thought there's going to be a goal in it. Where we were, it wasn't a very swift strike, was it? It kind of trickled a little bit, and I thought that's never going in, and then it just goes in the corner, and we went absolutely nuts. What I would say is, looking back at it, brilliant by Traore and Pereira, really, because both of them under pressure, but farcical defending. Like this is when I said at the top of the program, this wasn't a Premier League football game. It was ridiculous. Like they gave the ball away once. Adama's running down the wing, should have laid it easy ball on for Pereira. Instead, he just loses it. Then they kind of passed it straight into Maddison's back heel. He backs it heel back exactly where we wanted the ball to go in the first place. Dangerous ball in, comes out to Willian, whips it up. Literally a few seconds later, they give it away again. And when I saw this, I was thinking to Odegaard, yeah, go on, try and take them all on because you're going to lose that. And it looked like it was his error. But when I've watched it back, when you look at the Spurs players, there was no option. Spence is just not making an option. None of the players coming out. He had no choice but to just try and beat 3 or 4 players. Absolutely exposed. And then, when again, like I mentioned, lovely little bit of interplay by Traore, Pereira, and Muniz. But their defense are completely static. For all them, we've said how effective Bergvall was. He's literally walking in the opposite direction. Absolutely no sense that there's danger here. So it was a brilliant moment. Great play from us, but just comical defending. Sunday League stuff from Spurs, and that's where the goal came from, really. But brilliant.
Alex, I do want to mention, because I know you're a big fan of Jedi. Jedi played a major role in all of that.
He did.
He won the ball. So
absolutely.
So I'm going to put my hand up and give Jedi credit.
Yeah, put in a decent ball. He didn't. His crossing wasn't up to much on the day. Let's be honest. But that ball wasn't a bad one. It nearly
it wasn't bad
before it was cleared. So, wonderful stuff. And Muniz, I mean, he is an absolute joy. I love Muniz. I think he's brilliant. I love how physical he is. He really does bully defenders. I think he's got a classy touch on him at times as well. That goal he scored against Wolves was just utterly sublime. And I just, he really cares. Like the fact that he felt like he scored the winner. I know we got another after that. He wasn't to know, but he was just absolutely loving it. And it was a joy to watch his elation at the whole thing. So absolutely brilliant.
Okay, excellent. How about you, Kamal? Your thoughts on the goal?
Well, a lot of my attention was grabbed by watching Alex go off like a firework. He's like going nuts. I thought I had to put him in a straitjacket. And but the one, I mean, like these, Alex seems to have got the whole matrix right, about the defense and where the ball was going and who had the ball. For me, I was just excited to see. I keep going on about this, and I'm pretty sure Tony Gold, Tony, if you're there, you agree with me. I like direct football. I don't like it being played off to the side. And I saw within 7 seconds, I saw 3 major hits where Fulham players are trying to hit the goal. Yep. And if they do that throughout the match, I mean, I have an old joke, don't I, about Adame. And Alex was very excited that Adame was coming on when William went off. Oh, we're going to see some real action.
It was William. It was Iwobi went off.
Iwobi.
Yeah, like, oh, we're going to see some real action. I always say, like, the one thing about Adame is that, I mean, to be honest, I can't fault him, but he's always having shots on goal. But as I say, you put him in front of an empty goal, he will score like 1 time out of 100 or 0 times. And then Guardiola will come on and give him a little lecture at the end of the match.
Oh yeah, I'm right.
Exactly. Kamal's quite hard to please, right? So you got tiki taka if Adama isn't on the pitch, and it's all too boring. And then Adama comes on with all of his whirling dervish dynamism, and it's like, oh, he's just going to miss anyway. There's no point. It's hard to get Kamal happy at the game.
I guess
you know what they say, don't you? Alex coined it well a couple of weeks ago.
Wow. Well, hey. Over to you, Matt. What were your thoughts on the goal? Now, it's funny because we've talked a lot about needing a striker on Cottage Talk. I still think that they do, especially if, let's just hope that they get into Europe, they would need a striker, right? But these 2 strikers, including Raul, overall, they're getting the job done. They're, as I said on the post-match show, they're doing their job. And Rodrigo Muniz has taken his levels to the next level. And that, to me, it's not just the goal he scored here. It was his hold-up play, winning all those headers. I thought he was phenomenal in this match. But the goal, I think, was just a icing on the cake.
Yep. But this is the Rodrigo Muniz time of year, though, isn't it? Right. So last season, it was February, March that he was Player of the Month, I think, in February last year, and then got another 5 goals in March. I thought it was excellent. I thought the interplay between Traore and Pereira in a really tight space was brave, and I thought the Pereira to Muniz, the option that Pereira was actually going for was a really small space 1-2. So Pereira was actually going for the return ball, which was, I mean, it would have been amazing. I don't think anyone would have said, what I'll go for is a really slow finish, rolling it into the corner over there.
Yep.
It's incredible. I'm with Alex. I think the job that Marco has done with Muniz of turning him into this player that is so hard to predict. And if I were another team, right, there are plenty of other Premier League teams that must look at this young kid that we've still got, he's whatever he is, 23, 22. I mean, I actually don't know how old he is, but whatever age he is, coming off the bench, to put a negative on it, because we all need to sort of keep pace with Kamal and the tiki-taka and the open goals from Traore. My big concern is that someone's going to come in for Muniz in the summer. Yeah. He's got his contract finishes at the end of next season.
Yeah.
That's not a good place for us to be.
No, I agree.
We've got some contracts for this season that are, I wish we'd just pinned down Tese and Traore to extensions. I think with Jimenez, we need to, I would like us to be brave in the way that we were with Willian and say, we'll give you 1 year. If I don't think he'll say, look, I need a 2-year deal to stay because someone else will offer it to me. And I think we should stand firm on that. I think we should say, we'll give you 1 year with an option.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
But if that happens, right? So if he does walk, as Willian did, because his agent will be saying, we can get you a 3-year deal in wherever, the MLS or, French league or whatever it might be. Then we've got a real question as to what we're saying to Muniz. Are we saying you are now our first choice striker and we'll be buying a backup? In which case, Muniz with 1 year left on his contract, I'm not sure he's going to be signing any extension. In which case he would sign an extension.
Right.
Or we go and sign a Liam Delap type figure and say, Muniz, you're going to be in competition. In which case, I think he might say, I'll let my contract run out and I'll go and sign for Arsenal and be their rotation striker.
Yeah,
he'd fit the bill, right?
Yeah.
Not as their main striker, to be really clear. Right. I'm not saying he's that
there is a real issue because at the end, when he scored the goal, he made a point of coming right in front of the Hammy end, literally grabbing his shirt and showing that I want to be here. I love to be here.
Great.
I want to be here,
But this is another thing I love about him because he did have a brilliant end to last season. I think he was the starting striker at the start of this season. He wasn't scoring goals and he just lost his place. But whenever we're singing his song, which is a great song, by the way, but he is literally mouthing the words. He loves it. He absolutely loves it. And he plays with a real smile on his face. He's on the bench with a smile on his face. And, that's testament to Marco as well. But I do think it's testament to that player's attitude. And that's another reason I love him because, he could have sulked and gone, well, I was scoring loads of goals last season. I had a bit of a bad patch and then I'm out of the team. That's not fair. But he didn't. He just comes on. He does his job. He always looks elated. The other players you can see love him. And I think he's an absolute legend. I love him to bits. So
that's great. Good stuff talking about Rodrigo Muniz. Guys, before we talk about Cessa's goal, and I seriously want to talk about Cessa's goal, I want to talk about a moment because I brought up the whole situation with Raul, okay? So we have to bring up the situation with Bergvall. So, Matt, I'll go to you because you and I probably got some good views of this because I think it was probably difficult for the guys to see where they were. So I've watched this back several times. I've heard all kinds of commentary. I did 2 shows knowing that Spurs supporters and that many were going to be pointing to this moment saying, we should have got a penalty. This would have changed the match. I still think Fulham win the match regardless. I don't think it's a penalty. I've watched it back several times, but I can understand if it was given. What do you make of this?
I think it's pretty clear this. So it's not a penalty. It could have been given. The thing I would say here, though, is that this isn't Bassi kicking Bergvall.
No.
He gets his leg down in front of Bergvall to basically claim the space between the ball and him. And Bergvall goes through the back of him. Now, it's so close and it's in the penalty box, so it deserves the question being asked. I can see why, if you're a Spurs fan, you're appealing for it.
And clutching at straws.
Clutching at straws, exactly. But if Bassi had been, 0.2 of a second later, he'd have been clattering into Bergvall and it would have been a penalty. But he gets down in front and Bergvall kicks into the back of him. That's it, if anything, it was a foul against Bergvall. But I was relieved that the referee
waved it off.
Chose not to pick it off. Yeah, you know, it would have been difficult to overturn on VAR as well, I think.
Right, and VAR looked at it, and there was nothing to come of it. And that's the way you described it, Matt, is the way I saw it. So I'm thinking, I don't understand how others are seeing it the other way, but I've seen it given. The one thing that, again, I would be all for Bergvall coming to Fulham. I'm not against that, but he does have a little play acting in him, and I'll just mention that. And I think there was a little creating going on there. So for me, it was the right call. And I'm glad that we talked about it. Guys, I do want to now focus on talking about Cess's goal. And definitely, Alex, I'm going to start with you because this is so good on so many levels. The way that he bullied Ben Davies was phenomenal, okay? He bullied him, and then he hits it with his other foot, which is even better. I mean, he hits it with his right foot. So I want to get your thoughts. I know you must have been through the roof on this. Let's talk about Cess's goal.
Yeah, totally amazing moment. One of the highlights of the whole season, you know, absolutely brilliant. Like you say, great from Sessegnon, unbelievable finish. Like I just didn't see it coming. You know, even after the bullying, I thought he's going to hold it up, look for a layoff. Ping straight into the top corner, lovely off his weak foot. He said in the interview after he's been practicing, and Marco backed him up.
Yeah.
So he's been hitting those regularly apparently with his right foot. In terms of, you know, I'm just going to slightly temper it with, again, comedy defending. Not so much by Ben Davies. He did get caught up and
Spence.
You know, defending was weak. Spence, unbelievable. Just stood there like an absolute lemon, not following it back. Terrible, comical defending. But brilliant by Sessegnon. Yeah. And almost, or for me, even better than the goal was the celebration. I mean, so I don't know whether because it was like steeliness, no celebration on the one hand, maybe because he used to play for Spurs, but I don't know because it was so steely, it was almost a celebration without waving your hands around, you know. But the juxtaposition where Muniz just does this leapfrog right over his head, there's a picture of it. I thought surely that's AI. It just doesn't look like a real thing. He's so high. It is, and it's the juxtaposition of the joy of the other Fulham players. Again, talking about there it is. There you go. Talking about the togetherness of the team, the extent to which those two players, Sessegnon and Muniz, are evidently so popular to the rest of the team. They were so delighted for him. So his steeliness and kind of, you know, determinism in the moment versus the sheer joy of all the other players, it added to the sense of drama. It was all right in front of us. It was a beautiful moment of celebration. It was, so just absolutely electric moment, euphoric, iconic, brilliant. I loved it.
That's great. Kamal, I think this is something that Fulham supporters will be remembering for years to come. That, to me, is that moment. That's a special moment. So I want to get your view, what you were going through watching Cess's goal.
They'll be remembering it like those two Brentford goals that I was kept out of the ground for. I think I looked at Alex, and Alex was crying like a little girl. He was screaming, and I thought, and then I started crying like a little girl.
Okay.
I looked around. Matt, you should have been there. It was like the biggest. I mean, that was like one of the biggest celebrations I've seen at Hammy.
That's great.
And it was, I think my brother, was it somebody telling my brother, I think was telling me that the Spurs fans were chanting, "This is just like the Emirates." That, you know, we were really, as in we were being really quiet. I literally think we ripped a hole in the ground.
I mean, in fairness to them, we chanted that at them, at their ground. Is this the Emirates? Is something that we, you know, because it's standard fare.
So the other thing is that when Cess comes on, we see him on the Hammy end. We see all the subs are warming up on the touchline, and quite often you can see we can see that the players, some of the players do not warm up; they're just watching the game, and a lot of players were focused on Cess, and Cess looked like he was really not stressed. He just looked really deep somewhere. He looked like he was like somewhere else, and he wanted to make sure. And the other thing I wanted to that was really occurring to me is what we've been talking about with Nunez, Bassi, is how physical the Fulham team have got. And if you told me a year ago that we would take on Spurs in a physical duel and we'd beat them, I'd just say you're crazy. But we were, I remember the Spurs teams are famous for having big, tough, midfielders and defenders, but we were taking them on, and that where Sess took on Ben Davis, he just tossed him aside like he was a rag doll.
He did, Kamal. And what's great, I'm glad that you mentioned this, because go back in time to 2017, 2018, Ryan Sessegnon, and I'm telling you right now, he did not have the body to do that. Look at where he is now. We have the opportunity to see the best years of Ryan Sessegnon. It's come full circle. And that to me is what's so wonderful about that moment. And Matt, I want to get your thoughts on this because I watched this and I'm glad that we're focusing not just on the goal, but the reaction afterwards by the supporters and also by Sessegnon.
Yep.
I think that, again, this is just my opinion. I think he had to be a little bit conflicted because he had to be courteous to Tottenham, but at the same time, be excited to let everyone know how he feels about Fulham. Again, that was kind of like a tightrope that I think that's why we saw what we saw. I want to get your thoughts on that.
He's quite an emotionally contained guy. You can tell he's got a lot of poise, and he is someone who is also quite a quiet guy. You see the clips that the club put up about him. Him in the dressing room. They asked him to give a speech at the end of the game, and if it had been, I don't know, say Bassi would have been there cracking jokes and throwing stuff, and same with Iwobi, who might have done a little song or whatever. Whereas Sessegnon gave effectively what felt like a soundbite to the BBC. He was like, "Yeah, guys, tough game. Really pleased to that we've got the 3 points." It was like fine and good. So I never expected him to go flying into the Hammersmith end, and I did expect him to show respect, which he did to the Spurs fans in particular. And those guys were also, most of that team were his teammates last year. There's an element as well of there's respect on the pitch there as well.
I think he showed class, Matt.
I agree. He's a class act, and I think just at a performance level, I completely agree what you guys have said on his strength. Right, he's a different shape now. He's a better built footballer. The thing that's consistent with him and makes him quite hard to predict at times. So his finishing is excellent. He's taken over, I think, the Bobby Reed mantle of being someone who's, when they're through on goal or when there is a half chance, I feel pretty good about their prospects. Whereas Iwobi, I still feel is a bit erratic, and Smith Rowe is definitely a bit erratic, and Pereira can be a bit erratic. Of our non-strikers, Sess, I think, is the coolest in front of goal, and we saw it. He had all that time for the goal at Wolves, but he's hard to predict because he is, for a left-footed player, and I say this, I wish I'd been a left-footed player because life was a lot easier for them. They never learn how to use their right foot, whereas Sessegnon he finishes well with his right foot, so he crosses well with his right foot, and he shoots well. And I was taken back. I don't know whether you remember, I could say 6 years ago, he got a hat-trick away at Sheffield United in a game that we won.
I remember that match.
So we won 5-4 in that, and he scored 3 excellent goals, but one of them was a right-footed shot. It was from about 25, 30 yards. It was a right-footed shot. The number of left-footed players that will take on a right-footed shot from range, it just doesn't happen. Yeah. And so when Sessegnon ended up rolling Davies, who may have been thinking he'll move on to his left and try and roll me that way, I wasn't that surprised to see such a quality finish.
Oh, that's great.
But to what you guys say, I mean, I missed the game because I was at Legoland, so I was actually surrounded by crying girls rather than being the crying girl. But I felt in a very safe space to let out my emotion. It was just a fabulous moment, and I think the final thing I'll just say on that goal.
Yeah.
There's often a battle between fan bases as to who is the sort of biggest victim or who has the biggest curse and so on. So, everyone thinks the world is against them. There's all sorts of conspiracy theories from especially the big clubs. Spursy is a saying for, it always happens.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Spurs will see you now. We'll fix your problems. If you've got, if you're Ipswich and you haven't won in the Premier League this season, why don't you come to our stadium and we'll lose 2-1 to you? That sort of thing.
Yep.
That narrative arc of Ryan Sessegnon scoring against, his first goal back at Craven Cottage against Spurs felt too good to be true. And yet, Spursy being Spursy, that's exactly what happened, and it was delicious.
It was, man. It totally was. Let's answer this question from Jonathan Corbett. Do we think Marco has now realized that Cess is not a left back? Matt, what do you think? And then I'll go to Al.
Yeah, I think our reserve left back is Calvin Bassey, and I think Cuenca or Diop would come into the back four.
Okay.
I think that's now what he would do. I think Cess is now, utility wide man. We saw him come on the right against Man United away. We saw him come on the left at home here. I think that's the role he'll play for the rest of the season. So yeah, Jonathan, I think Marco has now realised he's not a left back.
I agree. Alex?
Yeah, totally. I think he realizes that as well. What I would love to see from Cess, though, because, he's doing well in the little moments he comes on, but it is a bit of a shame that his career is still stalled in the way it has, and this was a guy who, 18 won Championship Player of the Year. We thought he was going to be a real top prospect, and he had that thing that you can't coach, which was the amount of times he just pops up at the right place at the right
That's
time.
right.
And
still has it.
He was doing it from when he was a kid, So and like Matt says, he's dead eye in front of goal. He's calm. He's got a great mental fortitude, I think, about him. So I just, I don't know quite what he is. If he, he's definitely not a left back, but I think I would love to see him find himself in a way that he can really push on, because I still think he could be he could be an England international yet if he can just find that next step in his career. And I'm hoping a moment like this can really help him push on and find exactly what he is, because I'd like to see him be more than just a utility player coming on as a sub. I want to see him press on and really become the promise he had when he was 18.
I'm right there with you. How about you, Kamal? And then we'll wrap that up.
Well, I mean, so he's 24, I think. He was 19 when he went to Spurs. And he is, there's a lot of people now. I think the Sessegnon we have now is not the Sessegnon that left. There's a complete different psychological aura. He was like a sweet kid who everybody loved, expected magic from. And he now looks like, sometimes when he was walking yesterday, he looked like he had a metaphorical axe in his hand and he wanted to prove a point.
Yeah.
And this guy is now, there's calls for him to start. A lot of people saying he should start the next game because
I made the argument for this match. I made the argument, but I was wrong. Matt, I was wrong. Marco got it right. William was the right choice.
So, Matt, what do you think? You want him to be a super sub still?
I think you're both. I agree with all of you.
Listen, I'm not. You know me. I changed my mind.
I wouldn't start him. My theory is that we'll see. We now got a 2-week break. Crystal Palace have a 3-week break, which is a bit too long for my liking. If I were them, I would not like that. That's too much disruption. The first 11s will be very clearly played in that game, and I think Cess will, with Smith Rowe, will play in the Arsenal game, which I hate to say, there are no games this season that hold fear for me. That Arsenal game to me feels like one that I mentally write off now. That will be the game that is after the big defining game of our season as to whether or not we get to Wembley or not. And it's away, and it's only 3 days later. It'll be a reserve. It'll be mainly reserves rotated through. So it's I think Sessegnon will play right wing in that game, and will play a small part against Palace, but no more.
The one thing I wanted to say about Cess was that I think he's maybe 4 to 6 months away from the full Marco effect.
Yeah.
Because he'll be.
It's coming.
4 to 6 months.
He's improving, which is great. So he is. I completely. I recognize that he's getting better, and it's such a small opportunity he had, and he made the absolute most of it. And this is how Harry Wilson got back in the team. Remember,
that's right.
At the start of that season, Harry Wilson felt like someone who was where Harrison Reed is now, who was basically a sort of nice guy. We love him because of the Championship, and for some of the performances in the previous couple of seasons in the Premier League, but maybe it's time you're sort of drifting towards the exit door. And Harry Wilson came on, and I can't remember the game that it was, but he had a couple of cameos, and then he started getting a couple of goals. And obviously the Brentford game sticks out, but I think he had got a couple of, decent substitute appearances under his belt. And by the time Harry Wilson got injured, he was absolutely nailed on as our starting winger on the right. He had ousted Traore, who had been our starting winger at the start of the season. Sessegnon has the potential to do that, but he has to go on a hell of a run from here. And there are players coming back rather than drifting away. We've got Adama now coming back towards fitness. Wilson comes back next month. Yep. Tete in theory comes back, which will help Castagna, who looks absolutely exhausted. Yeah, I hope Belgium definitely are playing Luxembourg and Liechtenstein or some nice local non-event teams that he can just put his feet up for a couple of weeks.
Okay, great stuff, guys. I've had you here for a long time. I do want to wrap up the show. Before we go, I want to get a takeaway from each one of you to end the show. So I'll go to you first, Kamal. What do you take away from this match? What are you looking for in the future coming out of this match? What do you take away?
I would say I've been, scouring like a lot of the opinions, including yours as well. I really enjoyed listening to the review show this morning. I listened to it. This morning.
You.
Yes, I'm sorry about that, mate, but I listened to it this morning, there's so many different outcomes to this season, and I was talking to Alex about it yesterday. That there are so many potential European places up for grab, and it could be between 7 and 12. And I think that I'm a bit nervous. My takeaway from this, I'm hearing a lot about Marco, being tempted by the team that he smashed up yesterday, that they're kind of making overtures, and if he doesn't get into Europe, that his head might be turned. And so my takeaway from this is that he's dropping the axe. And if I know something, because I met Marco once, I think I've told everybody and been a little girl about it, but I think that Marco really loves Fulham. He loves the club, and
I think he does.
Who is it? I think Anthony Robinson was asked a week ago, how do you feel about Liverpool? And he said, well, actually, I want to play in Europe with Fulham. And I think times that by 10, and that's what Marco feels, I think.
Right.
And I think that we're getting, my takeaway from this match is that how determined the team are to, find their future, to get to what they've been promising to do for 2-3 years. Yeah.
Excellent stuff. All right. Over to you, Alex. What do you take away from this match? I think Kamal got us started real well there.
So great result, great 3 points, sets us up really nicely in the league. I know we're all saying let's focus on the cup, but I think there's, I think we should be looking at both these options, frankly. I do think it was a very average performance. Again, it was a big, it was a big improvement on Palace from last time out, but we're not where we need to be just yet in terms of the side really clicking. So if we are going to push on and have a brilliant end to the season, we need to find another gear. That's the main takeaway. I would just maybe put a different spanner in the works as well with regards to the next few games. Obviously, Palace, that's the big one. It's hard to look past that. But I would say if we did, if that goes wrong, that game, the Arsenal and Liverpool game in quick succession, if we go to Arsenal and get something, one, that puts us in a great position in the league. But two, Liverpool are going to be they're going to be wearing their slippers by the time they come to Craven Cottage the next week. If they've beaten Everton, they're coming to us when they've won the league already. And I think we can, if we get something against Arsenal, that will give us a real platform to get something out of Liverpool. And then you look at the rest of the fixtures and they look a lot more manageable and we'll be in a great position. So let's not put everything on the Palace game. Because a few times this season we've said, this next one is the best, but then we lose it and we think, it's all gone. And then the next week we beat Newcastle away or we beat Spurs. We do something amazing. So we do keep coming back when it looks like everything's gone. And I do think, there's still 2 avenues. We're in a good position in the league. Obviously, I'd love it if we have that FA Cup victory. That would be amazing if we go to Wembley. But an eye on both for me because they're both options and I really want to get to Europe one way or another.
Okay. I want to get to Europe too. Matt, how about you? What's your takeaway?
So I'm philosophically, I want to be where Alex is, but that's not where I am at all. I'm all in, death or glory, on the Palace game.
Okay.
the takeaway I have, so if you're looking for real signs of optimism, which is
Yep.
never what I find in moments of great jeopardy, which is the Palace game. So normally, international breaks, I loathe them because we send Anthony Robinson over to the US. He gets flogged because he's not a player who gets substituted for anyone, us included. He gets flogged, and then he gets on the Thursday night or Thursday morning flight back, lands Friday, plays Saturday, and is crap. And it goes all the way back to the Championship. When he first started getting called up, I remember him, being awful away at Blackpool. And, we lost that game, and it was appalling. As far as I can tell, the UN men's national team have won semi-final in the CONCACAF against Panama, and then that's it. But that's this Thursday.
Yep.
So he's done on Thursday and can hopefully come back with a bit of rest.
Yep.
And be flying. The same situation for Raul Jimenez. So he's only got one game with Mexico, whereas Munoz, their right wing back, who is athletically, I think, has been the best player, maybe along with Kirkez, who I've seen in the Anthony Robinson, can do back and forth the whole game long. Colombia have Brazil away, and then they have a home game on the Thursday night. So that he will be getting back Friday for Saturday lunchtime kickoff. So to me, that feels, if we can get the private planes sorted out, and come on, we're not meant to get your brother to pull some strings there, because I think Mexico are playing in Canada, so clear the airways.
Yeah.
But if we can get our players back and rested, Palace will have had 3 weeks off, which I think is too long. I think that's how you go rusty.
Yeah.
And their most athletic threat to us will have only just landed after playing for Colombia. So I feel pretty good, and I'm all in on Palace, and I almost to the point where I don't care about the Arsenal game. Obviously, I'll care about it.
No,
and Alex says we need to talk about going to that. But
will Mateta be back, by the way?
Yeah.
Do we know? He will be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a shame.
Okay. Good stuff from all of you. All right. Well, listen, I do got to wrap up this show. Guys, thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to doing more shows with you. Alex, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Cheers. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Russ.
Okay. Over to you, Matt. Thank you so much for coming on, and I hope to see you soon.
Thanks, Russ. Good to see you.
Okay. And Kamal, always good to talk to you. And your brother's been active in our chat section, so goodbye him.
This belongs to him, which is why I was flashing.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Thank you for doing this, Kamal.
That was a great show today. Thanks a lot for having us.
All right. Fantastic. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. My name is Russ Goldman. Thank you for the guys for joining me. And thank you, as always, for watching and listening to Cottage Talk. I want to mention that the podcast version is exclusive on the Cottage Talk Patreon page. Thank you very much for watching this episode.